What we want you to do in the pond unit is to understand what lives in a pond and why. Depending on your school, you might want to target a pond that's closer to you. We were talking about Edgewood Park. We happen to target Lake Wintergreen because it's really great. The kids feel very successful there. First of all, the definition of a pond is that it's a body of water that actually has rooted plants from one side to the other. It is an ecosystem containing living and non-living things, but there's actually 4 different habitats in a pond. The surface. There's some creatures that live right on top of the surface of the pond. The water's edge is probably the most important habitat. It's where you see the greatest diversity of life in a pond. Totally different conditions on the bottom of a pond. Very dark. It's going to be maybe a little harder to get oxygen down there. The open water zone. And that's where you're going to see the larger animals. Does everyone understand what an adaptation is? It's a behavioral or physical feature that gives an animal a better chance of survival. Adaptation and habitat are concepts that I revisit over and over again when I teach. And habitat is simply the place where an animal lives. It contains food, shelter, water, and space in the proper arrangement for that animal to survive. So animals are adapted to their habitats. They are designed to live where they live. We all know that a water molecule is H2O, right? So 2 hydrogens and an oxygen. If you get them coming together and they're heated up and they start bouncing like this against each other, fly right into the air, and then you've got the water vapor, you've got the water in the air now. But when water's a liquid and they come together, actually one side of the molecule is slightly negative and the other is positive. Opposites attract. So the water actually is attracted to each other like this. So you'll get them coming together much more closely as a liquid. When it's cold and it becomes a solid, they form a crystal, right? And now they're actually a little bit further apart, attached together. What we're going to do now is a series of water experiments. And the reason we're going to do this is it's going to be related to these pond creatures as we go through it. I'm going to place an ice cube in your water. Is it going to float or is it going to sink? One thing I want you thinking about is yes, ice is less dense. If the pond froze from the bottom up, nothing would be able to survive year-round, so thank goodness. A wonderful thing about water is that it's a solvent. It actually can dissolve substances. Eventually, the water is going to become saturated, so full that it can't hold anything more. Water not only dissolves solids like sugar, it also dissolves gases. Colder water holds more dissolved oxygen. As it warmed up, the oxygen came out, and you're seeing the little air bubbles on the side. This is just a piece of filter paper. They're sitting there with their roots in the soil. How does that water get to the rest of the plant? There's actually little tubes inside of the plant, and the water will actually climb up these tubes to get to the leaves and things, and it'll work its way up. Now the water is attracted to the side of the tubes, and it's also, remember I said, attracted to itself, so it's almost like the water climbs up a ladder. That's called capillary action, and that's how it moves up a tube to the top of the plant. How many water drops do you think you could fit on a penny? What was the record? Eventually, though, notice that gravity takes over and you reach a limit and the molecules break apart and it goes plopping onto the plate. I told you that water is attracted to itself. It actually forms almost a film. They call it the surface film. Sprinkle a little bit of pepper on this water. And one of the things I want you to do is just pretend these are like little water striders, all right? The fat in the water and milk is actually not attracted to each other. So part of the turn's attracted to the fat and the other's attracted to the water. Look what happens. Isn't that cool? Oh, come on. Look, check. That's pretty cool. I'm going to make this water really cold. And to make my point, I will turn it blue. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little bottle and I'm going to fill it with really hot water and I will make it red. See how it's going up? Doesn't it look like a volcano? Isn't that cool? Do you see that? So the water is going up because it is lighter. Watch what happens though as it hits the ice and starts to cool. What's happening? It's starting to sink. This happens in ponds and it is very, very important. It's called an overturn. Those nutrients that are on the bottom of a pond get mixed up twice a year. So what you're seeing here actually increases the health of a pond or a lake or whatever. I don't want you intimidated by these little creatures because if anything, if you remember the adaptation, I don't really care if you know the name. I arranged these by habitat. Water striders. Do you guys all know these guys? Yeah. These are the guys that literally walk on top of the water. This is the water scorpion, and we're now on the water's edge. See these structures right here? This acts like a snorkel. Now we're in the bottom. This is where you catch a baby dragonfly. You know how jet ski sucks in the water and then shoots it out? That's what these guys do on the bottom of the pond. They're called red-spotted newts because they're green, but they have red spots on them. They go through the tadpole stage, and then the babies emerge, kind of like teenagers would, and go on land, and they're bright orange. And these guys are called red Fs when they're on land. So see how they change? They are adapted to different habitats as they move through their life cycle. When they're little tadpoles, that stage they're at the bottom, then they go on land and they're bright orange and they're not designed for swimming at all. And then they turn green and they get the flattened top. Amazing animals. Here's my little toad here. I had a great frog and he escaped on me. See him? But not designed at all for water. No web feet on this little toad. What's the story with his feet? This is a painted turtle. Web feet. These are aquatic turtles. You will see these guys basking on logs. These guys reptiles are cold-blooded. If it's cold out, they're cold. So they need to get somewhere warm and use the sun to warm themselves. So you'll see them sitting on a log until they're warm enough. They'll plop in the water and then they'll go in to eat. What I think is incredible is you can go to the pond and go, you don't see a frog, a turtle. You go, there's nothing here. You use the net. There's a whole hidden world in that water. A dragonfly nymph, good for you. These are the giant pond snails. You can call them winkles. They're very, very cool. To literally take a creature and put it in a container in front of the kids, that's what I would recommend, where you come over and go, okay guys, choose one animal. You take it out, they have to draw it and do the worksheet. I think the long-term observation is going to teach them so much more. So that, like I said, sometimes it's hard to keep them focused at the water when you're trying to go through the adaptations and all that. In this way, they'll really get it because you can reinforce it and go over it again and again.